Whether you buy or rent, the cost of housing affects all of us. That's why our team spent months digging into this complicated issue, examining how we got here and where we might be headed.
Yeah, that'll give you the supply, reduce the cost.
For months, Target 12 crisscrossed the state. And how long has it been this hard?
It's never been this hard.
We fried empanada. We came to the United States. A little bit of cilantro, pursuing the American dream. The American dream is to own a house.
Talking to people directly impacted by the region's housing crisis.
And they're still upping the rent. Like, how do you expect people to live?
I'm not trying to be homeless. Honestly, I just want my apartment fixed.
Hearing all sides of the debate.
Where are these people going to live? Where is the middle class going to live now?
If zoning was really the enemy, then why is it here? Why has it been around for a century and all over the country?
We see many families buying together because they cannot do it but one or two, maybe three.
And asking those in charge what's being done. When does that money start translating into units? Give me a date. Each night, we'll bring you an in-depth report on 12 News, and we'll be back right here the next morning for more on our reporting into this housing crisis. Our special reports begin tonight on 12 News at 5. With the Target 12 investigators, Tim White, 12 News.
Housing can be a complicated topic involving everything from zoning rules to interest rates to construction costs. But the current crisis is also a simple story about supply and demand. Back in 2016, a report from Rhode Island Housing found the state needed to add at least 36,000 housing units over the next decade to meet the needs of the state's population. But so far, the state has built barely 18,000 units, only about half of what was recommended. And when supply doesn't keep up with demand, the result is what any economist would predict. Prices for the houses that are available have soared. Back in the early 2000s, the median single-family home in Rhode Island cost only about $135,000. Prices jumped over the next few years, then fell as low as $190,000 after the Great Recession, only to rebound during the 2010s. And in the wake of the pandemic, prices have exploded. The median home in Rhode Island now costs $430,000. At today's prices, experts say there isn't a single city or town in Rhode Island where the typical family can affordably buy a house. So why did Rhode Island all but stop building new homes? And what's being done to address the problem? All this week, Target 12 will have answers.
Federal housing data shows in 2023, the number of building permits issued in Rhode Island fell to the lowest level in 7 years, even as officials were putting hundreds of millions of dollars into this housing shortage. Bob Baldwin has been building homes in Rhode Island since the 1970s. When do you hope to have this done?
Midsummer.
Picking up where his father and grandfather left off.
We love to build houses. We can only build what the towns and cities will allow us to build.
Baldwin and other builders say they're facing major headwinds.
The reality is in Rhode Island, all the easy stuff is gone.
The primary hurdle, he says, is at the local level.
You have a bunch of neighbors that hate you because they think they own that, and they don't want to see anything change. They don't want the neighborhood to change. They've been dumping their leaves there for 30 years, dumping the grass clippings there for 30 years.
And they're going to fight tooth and nail to
they're going to fight
stop you.
tooth and nail, fanatically tooth and nail, to stop you at all costs. That's the problem.
Baldwin says local officials often use laws and zoning regulations to block projects or bog them down in court.
Go ahead, sue us. We know it. Sue us, we'll see you in 5 years.
5 years.
5 years, because they stall in the court system too.
Data shows Rhode Island's housing production has fallen off a cliff in the last 4 decades, from a peak of more than 7,000 permits a year in the mid-1980s to 2,000 to 3,000 during the 1990s. Then, following the Great Recession, the rate fell as low as 800 permits in 2011, and it's barely improved since. There were 1,400 permits issued in 2022, and preliminary numbers show fewer than 1,200 in 2023. Bob, what word would you use to describe the state of building in Rhode Island right now?
It's progressed from bad to worse to disaster.
The house builder told me the state of building new homes in Rhode Island is, quote, a disaster. Mm-hmm. Is he wrong?
No, he's right. listen, we have the worst housing production rate in the continental United States, the worst. I mean, that's a disastrous condition.
Stephen Pryor is Rhode Island's housing secretary. How many permits will be issued in 2024?
That's not possible to predict, but it won't be a lot higher than 1,000. It won't be a lot higher than 1,000.
Could it continue to decline?
It could. It absolutely could.
Pryor says the state needs to produce 2,000 to 3,000 new units of housing per year just to keep up with demand, double the current rate. When will Rhode Island be cranking out 2,000 to 3,000 units per year, best guess?
I don't think that the elements that are in place are yet sufficient to get us to that level. And that is treading water level.
In recent years, state lawmakers have poured over $300 million into housing, but Pryor says it will take at least 3 years for new units to be ready. As for other legal changes designed to spur more production,
those bills took effect in January, last month. So the system isn't even being reformed yet. It's just starting. So it's going to take time for us to percolate.
Pryor also says state leaders need to convince cities and towns that new construction is a positive.
We've got to, with precision, predict the new property tax revenue that would result, and we need to prove it.
It's improving. It's improving.
Baldwin does see signs that things are changing.
There are certain towns and cities now that are looking in favor of this and trying to work with the developers to find ways to accommodate this and fix the problem.
To check out how many building permits your town has issued over the years, we have an interactive chart on WPRI.com. And coming up tomorrow on 12 News this morning, hear what Pryor and Baldwin say may be the next hurdle to building more homes. With the Target 12 investigators, Tim White, 12 News.
Inside Tuxpan Taqueria, owner Diego Alcantar and his family cook up authentic Mexican food.
Simple food made with a lot of love. Our recipes are basically more than 100 years old. They have been passed on to generation after generation.
The restaurant has been such a success, it was recently nominated for a coveted James Beard Award. Alcantar's family of 5 came to the United States from Mexico more than a decade ago. He says they all worked multiple jobs and pooled their money together to buy a home. But they couldn't find anything in Central Falls, where on Wednesday, Zillow showed only 8 homes on the market. Instead, they bought in Cumberland, where there are currently 22 homes available.
That is a great achievement that we did since we came to the United States pursuing the American dream. The American dream is to own a house, to have your own business.
Realtor Alexander Parmenides says rising interest rates and limited supply of houses on the market has made it hard for buyers.
Last year, many people get out of the market because the interest rate was at 8%.
Data for the Rhode Island Realtors Association shows Central Falls was the most affordable place in Rhode Island to buy a home in 2023. 21 houses were sold in the city last year. The median price, $335,000. The price of a home in Rhode Island has skyrocketed in recent years, with the median price more than doubling in the past decade. Here are some examples from across the state. The median price point for a home in Warwick was $377,000 in 2023. Smithfield, $465,000. North Kingstown coming in at $550,000. And one of the pricier communities, Barrington, was $710,000. But it can be a challenge for families like Alcantars who had to work together to buy a home.
In order to buy a house, they have to team up. That's what we call multi-generational families. So they are a co-signer. That's the only way to do it.
He credits his drive to his mother's belief that families can achieve anything together, and hopes one day his family will be able to find an affordable house back in Central Falls.
We have a big Latino community, and I hope that one day we get to buy a house here, and what's better than to have your business here and to also live here.
Up on our website, we have an interactive map that breaks down the cost of a home in every city and town in the state. And tomorrow morning, I'll be looking into how much it will actually cost to purchase a house in Central Falls. With the Target 12 investigators, Sarah Grinelli, 12 News.
In January, I asked Rhode Islanders on social media to share their experiences of trying to find an apartment in the current market. I was flooded with responses, all echoing the same message. The cost of rent in Rhode Island has gotten out of hand.
Here's your supper.
Thank you, Ma. Kimberly Gagnon and her 7-year-old daughter Olivia are still settling into their new apartment in Woonsocket.
I've been here for 2 months, and I love it.
It wasn't easy to get here.
There was no apartments available. The only thing that was available was my sister's house. So I lived with her for 6 months. Took me 6 months to get into this place.
Gagnon was forced out of her last apartment after 10 years when she says a new landlord raised the rent, a situation many local renters can relate to.
There's nothing that's going to change until we have rental stabilization.
Suseli Murillo rents an apartment in Providence. She told me it was hard to find, especially since she had a previous eviction on her record.
Going through evictions makes you not have the greatest choices in life.
The cost of rent has been rising steadily in Providence since 2015. While data from Zillow shows rents have been increasing in many places nationwide, annual rent growth in Providence has sometimes ranked highest in the country, up nearly 8% over the last year.
Oh yeah, every year it's going up. Just kept on going up. Nothing changed. No repairs that I wanted to be done.
Gagnon didn't want to pay a higher monthly rent. She says her landlord deferred maintenance requests and ignored quality of life issues, including roaches. And when she spoke up, he threatened eviction. Gagnon left before that could happen, even leaving her belongings behind.
10 years of working and getting everything all by yourself, just for it to crumble.
Rhode Island Housing Secretary Stephen Pryor says the reason rents keep climbing is simple: a lack of adequate supply.
We're just not producing enough housing, even to keep up with demand.
State officials estimate that over 97% of multifamily housing units were occupied in Rhode Island last year, leaving very few available.
We've got to improve that. We shouldn't try to put, mere Band-Aids on it. We need to work on the fundamental problem, and soon. And soon. We need to do radical surgery.
Right now in Rhode Island, only family members can live in accessory dwelling units. The legislation that just passed the House would open that up to virtually anyone. And that's exactly why some people don't like it.
Accessory dwelling units are typically smaller living spaces, independent from the rest of the home. And while they can be detached, Marianne Kelly's ADU in Johnston is part of her daughter's house.
We didn't build any structure or anything out. We made it nicer.
A 400 square foot, 1-bedroom apartment with a separate entrance and kitchen. Kelly says living with her family has allowed her to retire 3 years early and get help when she needs it.
Having family next to you was so much more important than I realized.
It's why Kelly, an AARP volunteer, is advocating for legislation that would allow more people to live in ADUs. Charlestown State Senator Victoria Goose says if this legislation passed, caretakers, friends, or tenants would be allowed to move in, and the overall housing supply would increase.
Definitely in South County, there's additional obstacles to new construction. I think ADUs are a solution to the housing crisis in the short term because you can convert, let's say, a garage, you can convert a part of your house much faster than you can for new construction.
The legislation would set some limits. There could only be 1 ADU per property, and they couldn't be used as vacation rentals. But Cranston Planning Commission member Stephen Frias doesn't think ADUs would make housing in Rhode Island more affordable. And because the bill wouldn't require homeowners to live on the property, he worries it could cause problems for single-family neighborhoods.
And when you have absentee landlords, you'll see it. There's sometimes the property goes into disrepair. Sometimes the residents there can cause noise issues to the neighbors.
Frias also warns the legislation takes away zoning control from cities and towns.
If zoning was really the enemy, then why is it here? Why has it been around for a century and all over the country?
California enacted similar legislation a few years ago, and data collected by UC Berkeley found ADU production tripled, going from about 2,000 ADUs completed in 2018 to nearly 7,000 in 2019. But did it lower rents? A 2021 report found that ADUs, quote, do provide relatively affordable rental housing units for Californians, but warned they are far from a complete solution. Kelly recognizes there are concerns about ADUs, but argues people, especially seniors, need more solutions.
The reason I say that they're so integral at this point is people and compassion and understanding that there is a crisis and that we can solve it.
The Rhode Island House passed the ADU bill last month for the second year in a row. Last year, the proposal died in the Senate, but Senate leaders say they see room for a potential compromise this year.